The question came in the middle of dinner. "So, where are your husband and children?" "Oh, really?" My brother's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. My mother smiled, uncertain. My father chuckled softly, as if it were harmless banter. I felt my face burn. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The fork in my hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. I set it down carefully, afraid it might clatter against the plate and betray how much my hands were shaking. "David," my mother said lightly, still smiling, "don't tease your sister." But she didn't look at me. No one did, not really. They looked past me, through me, waiting for me to laugh it off so they could continue eating. My brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that familiar smirk on his face. He always knew where to aim. He'd been doing it since we were kids. The golden child, the funny one, the one who could say anything and get away with it. I used to think that if I was good enough, responsible enough, successful enough, they would see me differently, that I would matter the way he mattered. But sitting there in my childhood home at the table where I'd spent years trying to earn a place, I realized something. I had never mattered to them at all. Not really. I excused myself quietly. No one stopped me. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked hollow, tired, older than 36 should feel. I thought about my husband, about the empty house I would go home to, about the years I had spent waiting for him to be ready, waiting for us to be ready. And I thought about the laptop screen I had seen 3 weeks earlier, glowing in the dark. The messages, the other woman, the pregnancy. I pressed my palms against the sink and tried to breathe. How had I ended up here? I wasn't always invisible, or maybe I was, and I just didn't notice. Growing up, I was the eldest, the responsible one, the one who did her homework without being asked, who cleaned up after dinner, who never caused problems. My parents didn't praise me for it. They expected it. David was different. He was loud, charismatic, charming in the way that made adults laugh and forgive him instantly. When he forgot his homework, it was boys will be boys. When I forgot mine once, I was grounded for 2 weeks. I learned quickly. Love was conditional. You earned it by being useful, by not making waves. So I studied hard, got into a good college, built a stable career in marketing. I did everything right. When I met Greg, I thought I had finally done something that would make them proud. He was an accountant, steady, reliable. He didn't drink too much or make reckless decisions. My parents loved him immediately. My mother said, "Finally, someone sensible." I didn't realize at the time that sensible wasn't the same as passionate. We got married on a warm Saturday in May. My mother cried. My father shook Greg's hand and said, "Take care of her." I wore white and smiled in every photo, and I waited. I waited for Greg to say he was ready for children. I waited for him to look at me the way he used to when we first met. I waited for my family to ask me how I was, not just how my job was going or when we were having kids. But waiting is a quiet thing. It doesn't make noise, so no one noticed. Greg and I fell into a rhythm. He worked late. I cooked dinner and ate alone most nights. On weekends, we ran errands, watched TV, went to bed at separate times. It wasn't unhappy, it was just empty. And I told myself that was enough, that I was being dramatic, that marriage was supposed to feel like this after a while. My mother would ask, every holiday, "So, any news?" Meaning, "Are you pregnant yet?" I would smile tightly and say, "Not yet." Greg would change the subject, and my brother would laugh. The first sign was small. Greg started putting his phone face down on the table. It wasn't something I thought about consciously at first. It was just a shift, a new habit. Before, his phone would light up with notifications, and he'd glance at them absently, maybe show me a funny meme or a work email. But now the screen stayed dark, hidden. "Who's texting you?" I asked once casually while we were making dinner. "Just work," he said. He didn't look up from the cutting board. I didn't push. I didn't want to be that wife, the suspicious one. the one who checked phones and asked too many questions. So I let it go. Then came the late meetings. Greg had always worked predictable hours, 9 to 6, home by 7. But suddenly there were client dinners, last-minute projects, weekend calls he had to take in the other room. "Are you okay?" I asked him one night after he came home at 11. He looked at me like I'd asked something strange. "I'm fine, just busy." "Maybe we could do something this weekend," and I suggested. "Just us, I have a meeting Saturday morning," and he said. "But maybe Sunday." Sunday never happened. I started noticing other things. The way he turned his body away from me when he typed. The way he showered as soon as he got home, even if he wasn't going to the gym. The way he stopped asking about my day. I told myself I was imagining it. But one evening, when he went to take a shower, he left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't going to look. I wasn't. But then I saw the name at the top of the screen. Lily. And below it, a message. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. I've been thinking about you all day." My hands went cold. I scrolled up, months of messages, photos, inside jokes, plans, and then, near the bottom, a screenshot of an ultrasound. "Our little one," she had written. Greg had responded with a heart emoji. I stood there, staring at the screen, my heart beat so loud I thought it might crack my ribs. He was having a baby, just not with me. I didn't confront him that night. I closed the laptop carefully, exactly how he'd left it, and walked into the living room. I sat on the couch in the dark and stared at nothing. My mind felt like static. I kept thinking, this isn't real. This is a mistake. There's an explanation. But there wasn't. When Greg came out of the shower, he saw me sitting there. "You okay?" he asked, drying his hair with a towel. I looked at him. This man I had spent 8 years of my life with. This man I had trusted. "Who's Lily?" I said. His face changed instantly. The color drained. The towel stopped moving. "What?" "Your laptop was open," I said. My voice sounded strange. Flat. I saw the messages. I saw the ultrasound. He didn't deny it. That was the worst part. He didn't deny it. He just stood there holding the towel, looking at me like I had ruined something. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said finally. I laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. "You didn't mean for it to happen? You've been seeing her for months. You got her pregnant." "It's complicated." "It's not complicated, Greg. You cheated on me. You built a whole life with someone else while I was here waiting for you to be ready for us." He sat down on the edge of the couch, head in his hands. I don't know what to say. "Do you love her?" He didn't answer right away. That told me everything. "I feel alive with her," he said quietly. "I don't know how else to explain it. With you, everything is just routine, predictable, safe." The words hit me like stones. Safe, as if being safe with someone was a flaw. "Then leave," I said. He looked up, surprised. "What? Leave, go be with her. I'm not going to beg you to stay." He didn't argue, he didn't apologize, he just nodded, and 3 days later he was gone. The house felt enormous without him, and I felt like I was disappearing. The first week I called in sick to work. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for the exact point where I had failed. Had I been too boring? Too focused on work? Too afraid to push him? Maybe if I had been different, he wouldn't have needed someone else. The thoughts circled endlessly. I didn't tell anyone at first, not my friends, not my family. I felt ashamed. As if the fact that my husband had chosen someone else meant there was something fundamentally wrong with me. When I finally called my mother, her response was worse than I expected. "Have you two tried counseling?" she asked. "Mom, he got another woman pregnant." There was a pause. "Well, maybe you should have tried harder to give him a family." I hung up. I sat on the floor of my bedroom and cried until I couldn't breathe. A few days later, my brother texted me. "Heard about Greg. Guess you're officially free now, LOL." I blocked his number. I realized something in that moment, something I had been avoiding my whole life. My family didn't love me. Not really. They tolerated me. They expected things from me, but they didn't see me. They didn't care. And Greg hadn't either. I had spent my entire life trying to be enough for people who would never think I was. The weight of that realization crushed me. I stopped answering calls, stopped checking emails. I went to work, came home, sat in the dark. Some nights, I thought about what it would be like to just disappear, not to die, just to stop existing in the way I had been existing, to stop trying. But I didn't know how to do that yet. So I just kept moving, one day at a time, barely. 3 months later, my mother invited me to Sunday dinner. I almost didn't go, but part of me still hoped, still wanted them to see me, to ask how I was, to care, so I went. David was there with his wife and their 2 young kids. My parents fawned over them. My mother kept saying how proud she was, how blessed. No one asked me how I was doing. No one mentioned Greg. It was like the divorce hadn't happened, like I hadn't just lost 8 years of my life. We sat down to eat, and the conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. Then my brother looked at me across the table, that familiar smirk on his face. "So where are your husband and children?" "Oh, really?" My mother smiled. My father chuckled. And something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. I set down my fork. I looked at him. And I said, "You know what, David? I don't think I'm going to do this anymore." He blinked, surprised. "Do what?" "Sit here and let you make me feel small. Let all of you treat me like I'm invisible unless I'm useful." My mother's face tightened. "We're just teasing. You're being sensitive." "No," I said. "I'm being honest, and I'm done." I stood up. "Where are you going?" my father asked. "Home." "You just got here." "I know." I walked out. No one followed me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The next morning, I woke up and realized I had nowhere I had to be. No husband to cook for, no family to perform for, no expectations to meet. It should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt like breathing. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the light filter through the trees outside. For the first time in years, I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to ask before. What do I actually want? Not what Greg wanted, not what my parents expected, not what would make me look successful or stable or good. What did I want? The answer didn't come immediately, but the question itself felt like a beginning. I started small. I signed up for therapy. It was hard. I cried through most of the first session, but my therapist didn't judge me. She just listened. And slowly, I started to untangle the years of silence I had wrapped around myself. I moved out of the house Greg and I had shared. I found a small apartment across town. It had big windows and a little balcony. It was mine. I stopped answering my mother's calls for a while. Not out of anger, just out of necessity. I needed space to figure out who I was without their voices in my head. And one afternoon, sitting in a coffee shop, I saw something that changed everything. An older woman, maybe in her 60s, sitting alone at a table by the window. She was reading a book, smiling softly to herself, completely at ease. She looked whole, not lonely, not waiting, just content. I realized I wanted that. I wanted to be someone who could sit alone and smile. So I started building toward that. I took a photography class, something I'd always been curious about but never had time for. And that's where I met him. His name was Ben. He sat 2 seats away from me in the photography class, and I didn't notice him at first. He was quiet, thoughtful. He had a way of looking at things, really looking, that I found calming. One evening after class, we ended up walking out at the same time. "Do you want to grab coffee?" he asked. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't rehearsed. It was just honest. "Sure," I said. We went to a small cafe near the studio. We talked about light, about composition. about the way shadows could change the entire feeling of a photo. He didn't ask me about my life. He didn't try to fix anything. We just talked about small, beautiful things. And I realized I was smiling. Really smiling. Not the polite, performative smile I had worn for years, but something real. We started meeting for coffee after every class. Then we started meeting on days when there was no class. Ben wasn't perfect. He was awkward sometimes. He overthought things. He had his own scars, his own history, but he was kind. And he saw me, not as someone who needed to be fixed or saved, just as someone worth knowing. One night we were sitting on a bench by the river watching the lights reflect on the water. "Can I tell you something?" I said. "Of course. I was married, it ended badly, and I don't think I'm completely okay yet." He nodded slowly. "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to be." I looked at him. "You're not going to ask me what happened?" "Only if you want to tell me." I didn't. Not yet. But I knew eventually I would. Because for the first time I felt safe. Not the hollow, predictable kind of safe I had with Greg, but the kind of safe that comes from being seen, from being allowed to be imperfect and still be enough. It took time. Ben and I didn't rush. We didn't fall into anything. We just grew. I told him about Greg eventually, about my family, about the years I spent trying to be enough for people who never saw me. He listened. He didn't try to fix it. He just held my hand and said, "I'm sorry that happened to you." And somehow that was enough. I kept going to therapy. I kept setting boundaries with my family. My mother called a few times, annoyed that I wasn't coming to dinners. I told her I needed space. She didn't understand, but I stopped waiting for her to. David tried to make a joke about my new boyfriend at one family gathering. I looked at him calmly and said, "His name is Ben, and I'd appreciate it if you spoke about him respectfully." He blinked. My mother looked uncomfortable, but I didn't apologize. I didn't shrink. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of myself I had been with Greg. Not the version I had been for my family. Just me. Ben and I moved in together after a year. It was a small apartment, but it was ours. We cooked together, took long walks, talked about everything and nothing. He didn't complete me. He didn't save me. But he walked beside me, and that was more than I had ever had before. One evening, we were sitting on the couch, and I looked around the room, at the photos on the walls, the books we'd collected, the little life we'd built together. "I'm happy," I said, surprised by my own voice. He smiled. "Me too." And I realized I would have been okay even if I hadn't met him. I had already saved myself. A few months later, I went back to that coffee shop, the one where I had seen the woman sitting alone, smiling. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window. I brought a book, not because I needed to distract myself, just because I wanted to. I sat there reading, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, not because I had checked all the boxes, but because I was enough, just as I was. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who waited for permission to exist, the one who believed love had to be earned. I wished I could tell her, "You don't have to try so hard. You are already whole." Ben texted me while I was sitting there. "Want to grab lunch later?" I smiled and typed back, "Yes. Meet you at home." Home. Not the house I had shared with Greg, not my childhood home where I never felt seen, but the place I had built, the life I had chosen. I looked out the window, at the people passing by, at the light filtering through the leaves. And I thought, I'm okay. I really am. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever spent years trying to be enough for people who could never see you, please know this. Your story isn't over. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly who you need to be. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, you can stay here with us. You're welcome in this place.